game. So basically this session's about lineout clarity and giving you guys pictures and scenarios tonight on how we handle our setup. You know, going back to what Bryce said a couple of weeks ago around housekeeping in our lineouts, like just making our lineouts trying to look the way that we want to, like how we want our lineout set up, how we want that picture to be, and teams adjusting to how we want a lineout to look. We want it to be clean and clear, so that it takes an issue out of the game and it doesn't cause any dramas. And also looking at like different areas of the playing field and what our role is as a referee at the lineout at all times. So we're not just getting there, setting a line, and then just waiting for the ball to be thrown in. Like, are we being alert around, you know, who's coming into the line, what the numbers are, you know, are players leading and going at the line out, you know, are we being alert around that, you know, and different phases in the lineouts that will occur. So as opposed to a 5-metre lineout attacking or a 5-metre lineout defending, you know, where a team's going to slightly trying to gain an advantage at the lineout time. Outcomes, what I would like you guys to get is the communication at lineout. So who are we communicating to, why are we communicating to them, and when are we doing that? Positioning at the lineout, so where do we position ourselves, why do we position there, and do we transition, if at all, throughout the game? And then priorities, so what are the key things we need to do to have a simple but effective lineout? What I want to start with is I just want to start with like our 3 groups here, and I just want us to brainstorm like what our lineouts look like, what are the laws, what are some of the key law impacts around our lineouts, and then also like giving group, and then I'll go on to giving you guys different group scenarios around a picture. So like I'll give you a scenario and then you present it out to the other groups, and then basically try and interpret like what that picture looks like, but also how that, and I'll be seeing a trend in that at any stage throughout our club games. So what I'll do is I'll give one piece of background for each team, and what I want you guys to do is just brainstorm a lineout. What a lineout is, what are the key things we're looking out for a lineout, what are the main, and what are you scanning for, and what are you looking at?
We've nominated Grant Wilson to speak for us.
Wonderful. Grant?
Thanks, Grant.
Yeah. We've got a bullet point, which says, what is the lineout? The lineout is a set piece that restarts play when the ball goes out.
Yep, that's correct.
Minimum number of 2 from each team, set up at the mark on the touch, and then we've drawn a diagram of what the lineout looks like.
Yep, this is it.
This is our picture. We're going to spend the next 8.5 minutes discussing laws.
Nice.
Didn't get much else on paper, did we?
Well, we've got 7
Nice.
from each team lined up.
Talk us through your diagram. Like, how would you guys set up the lineout? Would you set the mark, and would you get the props to then create the gap, or would you create the gap?
The first lineout, well, I do anyway, they'll get the hooker to put the ball on the ground, make a mark, and say to the 2 guys at the front of the lineout, this is your gap, and I usually set a pretty big gap. This is your gap, everybody lines up behind you. I make sure that there's a non-throwing hooker 2x2, and that the back lines are back 10.
Yep. And who dictates the numbers?
Teams throughout the morning.
Yep. What else are you looking for as the lineouts as the ball's about to be thrown in? What are you looking for? Are you looking at whether the hooker's walking, or are you looking at the line normally without ARs here? So where do you stand so that you get a full picture?
Usually like to stand at the front of the first couple of lineouts, and I usually stand over to the side so he's a peripheral, you can see this sort of thing. But no, you're usually looking at the lineout. But also we were talking about the receivers 2x2, or 2 metres from the line, and the fact that they don't have to have a receiver, but they can't have more than 1.
things like back lines, back offside, the line of touch and not being able to leave the line of touch until the line out's over, so that goes 15 or moves away from the line of touch.
Yep.
That was our only kind of additional law things to add to it, as well as obviously figuring out who throws the ball in and all of those types of things are important law questions to do, as well as players competing in the line-out, being played in the air and all of those types of things are important law considerations, but apart from that,
Also,
basically
when
what
it
you guys
starts
said.
and when it ends.
Yeah, when it starts and ends.
Yeah.
But yeah, nothing more really than this team sorted.
Cool. Alright, moving on to Stella's group, who's been nominated to speak there.
The islands. So we took a slightly different tack. We decided that it's far more important to work out whether or not it was out, where was the mark, whose throw is it, and is it still live before we got to the line out questions. Because all of those things need to be answered first. So once we got to the line, so is it out? Yes. Where's the mark? There. Whose throw is it? Theirs. Is it live? Yes for a quick throw, no for the line out. So that was our process. And then we've got line out setup. So the minimums was you need a thrower. You need someone else standing opposite the thrower. You need a minimum of 2 from each team standing half a metre from the line of touch. And Graham coined the phrase, and anybody else is an optional extra. And then obviously the one thing that we forgot to write down, but thanks to the first group, and everyone else is 10 metres back. So that was that. And then we had the referee setup. It's either at the front or the back, on the throwing side or the non-throwing side, or in the zipper. And then we got this. So I drew this picture.
This is mine.
And so the question is, what's the highlighted zone in the middle? And are those 3 balls being thrown in straight?
Yes.
Yes.
Cool. So obviously
I like that.
the 2 bodies shifting to the centre doesn't eliminate the fact that the channel is the inside shoulder on setup. So all 3 of those line out throws are straight.
Yeah. Real good points amongst their so it's at the line out, as been discussed previously in previous meetings, it's our opportunity to also take a breath, but we sort of allow the time. So when we get the front rowers to set the line, okay, they make the gap, okay, we can take a breather, but when we're up and we're scanning, what other things do you think we're looking for in terms of team that's throwing in terms of who's coming in, so who are we communicating to if, say, they're walking in? Who are we communicating to, do you think? So if, say defenders have got 6 men set up and attackers are walking in with 4, do any of us communicate with the defenders?
Yeah.
Yep.
And we can be proactive with that. We can be preventative and actually just, rather than stand there and say, I'm going to blow a free kick for the, thinking in our head, I'm going to blow a free kick for numbers, when you've already identified it. Why not actually have other things the team say, well, numbers guys, give them the opportunity, and then if they don't fix, then you can blow the free kick. That's right.
Does anyone else take a different approach?
Well, I mean, we should be proactive there because the defending teams, obviously all they're set up, and the attacking team and throwing team are pissed around getting their line out set up, so why reward them turning up late with less players?
Especially with the trend that I'm seeing of teams standing 10 metres out and fudging around.
Yeah.
My go-to phrase in that situation is no numbers. So if you want to, you can leave all 7 here, but obviously they're going to drop some because if they have all 7 there and they only bring in 4, then there's a mismatch in the back line. But there certainly won't be a free kick for numbers.
So, I suppose the other question that I have is, does anyone, when you've dictated the numbers and the defenders have dropped their numbers, and then the attackers come in, who allows them to go straight up from there? straight up on the spot as they've entered the line.
They must be formed.
Yep.
They must be formed before they can throw the ball in.
Is anyone seeing trends at the moment in that?
So the trend I'm seeing is exactly that. Teams are deliberately delaying formation because they've got some fucking planned move where they're going to walk in and then go out.
They'll stop about 4 or 5 metres away sometimes from the line of touch, and just wait, and then they'll go, bang.
And we're not dealing with it. We're not doing anything about it, and we need to.
Essentially doing a running shot.
I don't mind them doing that as they're walking to the line out, but I don't want to see them walk into the line and then stop 5 metres away and stuff around. Because you're allowed to walk into you're allowed to set a line out and then go quickly. That's fine. But what I don't like people doing is waiting here, waiting for all of your line out there, and then we're going to walk in and go quickly. I don't want to see that.
I think they're I feel they're stopping because they're looking at the opposition, and I think they're targeting where they're going to position. I don't know whether they're actually getting a running jump. You know what I mean? If you've got a couple of big defenders here.
They're doing exactly what you just said, on purpose.
Yeah, they're doing it on purpose,
And
but I think they're doing it more
that needs to be stopped.
I think they're doing it more to work out, well, you've got 2 big guys here, we'll swap and we'll go out this way.
Again, don't disagree with you, but what I'm saying is, it's illegal.
How do you lay that head on so that 2 half-backs before the ball's thrown and all of a sudden he jumps in and we go, hang on a second.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about teams delaying the formation of the line out while they flicker around so that they can find a weakness in the lineup of the opposition so that they can put their pod there. And they're doing it deliberately and they're delaying the formation for them to get that advantage, and we need to stop that from happening.
Because I think that's covered in law, isn't it? Because
delaying the formation.
well, it is that, but in terms of you're allowed, once you're not formed a line out, you're allowed to change position in the line out, but if they're doing that before they're in the line out, that help things up, isn't it?
Yeah, so they're holding it up by delaying the formation. The reason why they're delaying the formation is so that, well, if we stand here, we'll wait for you to set your line out up, we'll put our pod against one of your lifters as opposed to one of your jumpers.
See, if we start doing it, then everybody's going to do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a free kick, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think it's...
but you'd manage it. You would just say, stop, don't form up over there. This is where the line of touch is. This is where you form.
I think I used to, like, so that used to be my pet hate, is exactly the scenario that Pat's just described. I was probably more, like, onto it a bit more in the past in terms of actually saying something about it, because I used to say way too much before the game and then nothing sunk in. So I'll probably strip back a lot what I say before the game now. But it's actually quite easy to manage if it is becoming a trend that's annoying and then like it's just stuffing up, because it stuffs up your gap. It stuffs up your management, because all of a sudden team are contesting way closer to the ball, and it actually makes life so much harder for you because what you have to rule on. Whereas if you had set it up with a nice clean gap, and then all of a sudden you actually don't have 90% of the issues that you have at line-out time, for what you're looking for. But it's easy to manage. We say, right, come in red. Yeah, come on, and then if they do it again later, say, come in red, I've already told you today. Let's go. And then you can go down the path of, I think, just anything else. But you'll normally by the time you give them a couple of chats, like, let's get it going. They listen. They don't want to get free kicked on their own ball.
Yeah, I mean, keep it simple, as a line, away from the line.
That's all it is.
That's all it is.
I went out for Gavin, 2 weeks ago, and he was doing a lot of mountain grazing. They were delaying, and Gavin just time off, spoke to both teams.
Yes.
You must form the line, and you must form it immediately. I'm not going to piss around. If you guys are going to delay, I'm going to free kick.
Yeah, $10 is a amount. They tried to do it on Saturday.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
So obviously on that, like, if we've got trends like that going in our game, what could we do to be more proactive at the line out? Because if there's certain teams, as we've identified in just the most discussions, what could we say? Because there's always going to be teams that will try it with someone who they haven't had before. So to keep it consistent across our levels and our panels, what defender's set, yep, team's walking in, okay. We've identified they're walking in, we say, come in blue, as an example, come in blue, and then say, look, I hold the ball, wait for them to set, so that we also give the defenders the opportunity, because the defenders, most defending teams that I've had anyway, they pretty much set up the line out straight away, waiting for the attacking team, especially on a penalty, and they actually look at what the attackers are doing, and then they actually just are set ready to go, and I say to the attacking team 4-man, and if they say yep, and they've got 6, I'll say 4-man black as an example, and I'll allow them to drop, and I'll just say blue hold the ball, so that then when they get set up, it doesn't actually give them the opportunity to, one, go quick, but two, also dictate to me, oh, ref, they have numbers. Does that make sense to everyone? So what are some things, housekeeping wise? I think looking up at, are our defenders set? 2, what are our attackers doing? So being clear with our attackers. 3, also keep communicating at the line out. So not just allowing the attackers to dictate how the line out goes. I think we can kind of dictate how the line out goes, but obviously not trying to disadvantage the attacking side, but just allowing it to be a clear, precise line out, so that there's no, as we've said, dicking around or anything, or there's no sort of trying to get a free kick or a penalty out of it. So what I want to do now is I want to show you guys some line out scenarios that I've got, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to play it for a little bit, just pause it, and I'll pause it, and then I'll see like if we're seeing any trends before we come to the decision. That works. There we go. Was it working? Oh, there we go. So, gold throw in, and just sort of have a look at what gold do. What are we seeing?
I've had the receiver join the line out.
Yep.
But not swap, really?
Yep.
They kind of just come in.
What else can we see there?
Goes past the line.
Closing gap. Closing gap. Yep.
What a shambles.
So.
And then another player left and then came into the 5.
Yep. So free kick was for gold. Free kick was there against gold for coming in and out of the line out.
This is 2:29 into this game, eh?
Yep.
Most probably the first line out of the match.
Have we seen any of that, like half back walking in, jumping up?
You're allowed to do that, though.
Yeah, allowed to do that, but obviously that crossing in and out.
Oh, so the free kick was for closing the gap.
So the free kick was for closing gap, but there were actually 2 infringements. So she called close the gap, but the half back actually went in and another player swapped out.
You're allowed to do that.
I think it was for the fact that they didn't swap. The other player stayed in the
Can
line.
you see the
as part of
signal?
line.
Can you just replay this so we can see the red signal?
So they all stayed as part of the line out.
Oh, now you've got,
The three left.
Yeah.
You can actually indicate,
Yeah, so she's.
Yeah.
What do you reckon that's for? I reckon it's because that girl's across the line a touch.
yeah,
what's closing the gap, what's that symbol?
Oh, closing the gap. Okay, yeah.
yeah.
I don't reckon it's for the halfback doing the switcheroo stuff. I don't reckon it's that.
The first offence was closing the gap.
Yeah.
First defence was closing the gap, but the halfback walked in and then the 3 walked out. So it was.
If you pay the end, you'll see that not only 3 walk out, but
Yeah,
the
there's
other
2 of
one
them.
walk out as well.
Yeah.
You end up with multiple.
So you have multiple offences there, but. It's
So
just,
that's an example of a classic clusterfuck. They've cocked up their own throat.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in the fact that we're 2 minutes 34 into a 0-all game, and she's at the back of this lineup. I don't know if there's been 4 or 5 other lineouts
Yeah.
in the 2 minutes 34, but if that was my first lineout, I'm standing at the front of the lineout, making gaps, making sure the hooker's in the right place, halfback's in the right place, and I'm standing mirroring the opposition's non-throwing person.
So, as Pat said, classic example, early in the game, we're standing at the back of the line out, it just makes the front of the line out real messy, and it can be a trend in the game, and once you kind of have lost the line out, it's probably hard to get it back sometimes.
So we're saying that was a setup problem.
Setup problem, yeah. Setup problem,
That's
setup problem,
That's
but
an
also...
international team, I'm sure
Yeah.
they practiced that line out like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They practiced.
I don't know, I mean,
It's a setup problem, but it's also like looking at the referees.
if we saw that and actually didn't know really what we were looking at, like in the first line out of the game, is anyone so I think maybe the standard we're setting is anyone going to let, do we let that line out carry on?
No.
No.
Or what can we do, even if we're not sure on what's just happened?
Yeah.
What can we do?
Like what would be a way?
Blow it up.
Start again,
Start again. You stand here. You stand here. You don't come in and stand here.
You throw it in properly.
Yeah.
And can you fellas work out who's got to do it?
Pretty much.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's take away the fact that it was women's rugby. You see it happen in men's prem development and stuff. I've seen it happen
Secondary schools, junior, like across the board.
across the board. So
Yeah.
it's not just the trend in one grade.
Premier men on Saturday at the mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we just look at this one,
Australia's kicked it straight out.
so 33 seconds on the clock. Referee position.
Great.
Great position.
Great
Well,
position.
Mr. Shabir. Craig, good work, Craig.
So your position
Line
is
out. What's happened?
Well,
Oh, I'll play it again. Sorry.
I was looking at
No, you're up. So if we watch I know it's a bit hard with the crowd, but the Wales hooker and the Wales line out,
Early
Early lift.
and then about 3 balks.
Not straight.
Yep,
So the first official was the Welsh jumper that put up earlier.
got put up early, yep.
I noticed that what did something to the line out. As soon as he got put up, it just turned the defence into disarray as well. Then there was no gap after that,
Yep.
and then no one really knew where to throw it, and then it just turned into a shambles. So
Stephen Moore won the throw though.
Yep.
So now we've got advantage.
Yep, so advantage, advantage, but,
I've already blown it.
we would blow that pretty much straight away, wouldn't we?
Here's an interesting coaching moment for Craig. My question to you people is, do you think Craig saw the ball from where you were standing?
No.
So I'll play it again. Play it again, and if we just watch Craig, the referee, just see what he's doing. So
He's watching.
yeah, he's what
oh, he had a look.
He had a little look.
he had a look.
Yeah, but the free
Yeah.
kick was...
For the
Early lift.
Yeah,
It's actually you could have seen.
but the touchy come
The
through.
throwing team.
Yeah, early lift.
Regardless,
Yeah.
regardless of all of that, I would say 38 seconds. into the
38
game,
seconds, and
standing
that's the
at the
stand.
front, so what's Craig concentrating on at that point of the game?
He's concentrating. What do you think he's concentrating on at 38 seconds into the game? As Graham just said.
Setting the standards.
Set up.
Setting
So
Set up
line out,
standards.
set out.
he could have let the advantage go, but then he's still got to deal with the messy
Yeah.
next line out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Deal with it, yeah.
So yes, I mean, advantage is there because Australia did win the ball, but if we let it go and not blow a free kick, what do we think our next line out's going to look like? Exact same.
Here's a question, what would the AR do? Or what would be expected of the AR?
AR would, you'd hope the AR would come through balking the line out.
Can he?
Hopefully.
Well, this is why I asked the question. When you're standing at the front of the line out, how do you angle yourself so that you can see with one eye? I can see Nick where he's standing right now. I can just see his hands, and I can also see probably to Sam. So if Nick sort of did a balk, I could see that.
So
But if I'm here looking down the line out, and next to a balk. I can't see that now.
There's no walk here though.
Yeah, I know, but there potentially could have been a balk.
Yeah,
And that's the point. So he's standing in the perfect position,
yeah.
and I suspect he could see the ball. Looking at that angle, out his right eye, he'd probably be able to see the ball.
Yeah, so referee position, pretty good, but again, cluster of that Wales have just pretty much mucked up their throw. As we
He
play.
panicked and he threw
Really,
it.
yeah. Three balls.
To Stephen Moore, who was
Yeah.
away,
Yeah.
who looks like he's a bit gutted to not be rewarded. He made his comeback on the weekend, played for Uni in Brisbane, after about 3 years retired.
So this is scenario 3. So a bit later in the game, so
Japanese players coming right across onto the Irish side.
It hasn't gone 5 metres, but
so not that we would see that too often, but there are some teams that do have that short throw. So where's referee standing? Yep. So a little bit later in the game, we haven't seen the rest of the lineouts, but if a team attempts that at any time, what's the disadvantage of being at the back? Can't see the 5. I mean, I know AR's there and stuff, but let's thinking of us not having ARs.
When the way that it's set up, there's no way they're going to throw to the back.
no.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
but they only have 4 players in the line-out, so
Yep. So
like, there needs to be, especially in the middle at the back, like that'd be the perfect time to be up front because you've got right here where the action is.
You almost can read that there's going to be no
no
jump
back.
either.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do we look at that as well in terms of how our teams set up their line out? So if they've got 3 at the line out, where do you think they're going to go? Yeah. And if they move, are we disadvantaged if we're still at the front, even if they start at the front of the line out and then they go back? Are we disadvantaged at the front? Because we can still see everything, eh? So in that position of reading the line out, like that's probably a good example. Short line out, probably don't want to stand at the back, even though it's later in the game. We still it's still reading line out plays, which is probably something to think about.
We were having a little bit about lineouts outside when we had did a few drills at for fitness earlier today, and I can't remember who raised it. Hemi, Adam raised. No, sorry, I can't remember who raised it about. Well, what if we're standing at the front and then they do go short and then they come back to the thrower? You know, that pass back to the thrower. How's that going to impact where we stand, and are we going to be in the way? So I guess I just wanted to throw that thought out to anyone as well. Or even Sean, was it you that brought it up, Sean? I can't remember. Oh, Sean, was it you? Okay, can you say something around that, Sean? That'd be great.
What was the answer you got?
What was the question?
Well, I just we were talking about, as Cam said, just positioning around when we're attacking line out about 5 metres out from their try line. And I had it on the weekend as well, where I thought they were going to maul, so I went to the back, and they actually went short. And I was lucky I could actually see the 5, and I knew it didn't go 5, but they did go to that first man and then pop it back into that hooker. And all I thought was, if I was standing there, it was definitely getting cleaned out, because he came around in quite a big arc to get some speed to run onto that ball. So that's
Was it a front move?
yeah, up and inside that 5 metre.
Yep.
So they never went 5, which was fine, but yeah, so they just went quick to that short one, and then the hooker came around right where we would normally stand if we were to stand at the front, and just popped it to that hooker. So I just didn't, where would you kind of stand? That's kind of a big thing for me. You can kind of tell if they're going to do a short ball.
I personally really liked where Craig Javere was standing just before in that previous clip. It's because it was a little bit deeper, a little bit further away. If you saw that coming, you would have an opportunity as you follow the ball in, just how Sam was telling us earlier tonight as well. As you follow the ball in, you're going to be out of the way, you're going to be ahead of that thrower, that hooker anyway. So you're going to get out of the way of that
of that hooker who's going to get the ball.
And if it does go to that, you can just get
You
it.
can carry on.
So, take a look at another scenario.
Great gap, by the way.
Again,
Great.
again, a little bit later in the game. Are we happy with the green hooker and halfback where they're standing?
Halfback's probably a bit far away, but who cares?
Still with it.
The hooker's around.
Oh no, he's got to be 2 metres from the line.
Two, yeah.
Yeah. He's probably what? 4, 3, 4.
3, 4. Yeah.
I mean,
Who cares?
is that going to?
Is it going to impact? Like, would we ask him to come in?
Which one
Probably
is
not.
it?
The green, receiver,
Green.
the green.
The green receiver.
Has he got to be 2 metres? We talked about that, or is he got to be within the 2 of the 10?
He's got to be 2 metres.
Law's 2 metres.
And he's got to be inside the 15.
2 metres from the line out inside the 15.
He's got to be 2 metres.
He's
He's got to be 2 metres.
He stands 2 metres from the line out. What the law says. And so, I mean,
It can be anywhere between 5 and 15.
Yeah.
There's got to be 2 metres. And they choose to set their half back up with the opposition man. He becomes a defender to close off the seam. The seam is that weak point between the back of the line out and the inside shoulder of the first line. That's his job, is to close that seam off.
Cool. So, play through. Play it again.
what's wrong with this picture?
He jumped right.
So he's jumped across the line, come through.
Where is the offside line while the lineouts going?
So the line touch.
Touch. What about if the lineout's still active and either more or a ruck form?
If it's a ball or a ruck, time on its feet, if it's the ball's been taken and before a ruck ball is formed, it's the ball
The ball.
becomes the offside line.
So can we play that again with that knowledge?
You pause it there at the moment, it's
Please. So
So
right now, where's the line? Where's the offside line?
Ball.
Has he got his hands on it?
The red guy has.
every guy has.
So Hannah briefly held it.
Yeah.
It was caught and thrown as opposed to
Yeah.
snapped out.
So
Yeah.
catching it froze the offside line.
Yeah.
But the player in the air wasn't able to be frozen. So the moment he's hit the ground, he's offside.
Yeah. So he
In
would
my
have-
opinion, because he's on the wrong side of the ball.
So
he would have had to retreat.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if he retreated.
if he
yeah,
retreated.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he wasn't going to get out of that. He was
Yeah.
and that's an easy sell.
So
Everybody's screaming out offside, even the old lady up in the back row.
I've seen about
She's
two
the
offences
young
there. Would we call for him jumping across the line free kick, but obviously offside and then touching it? Would we go free kick first or penalty?
Jumping across the line.
Oh no, I'm penalising him for being offside.
So all agree though, penalised for offside?
It's an easier sell.
It's an easy
He
sell.
carried on with it, like he just,
Yeah, he
like,
did.
and
He
then
was
therefore
flailing his arms around.
Yeah, he's lanky. Look, I'm offside.
he was big and tall. It's like, no. Yeah.
Can we just replay that? Was he thrown there or did he jump?
It's kind of halfway.
Kind of half
Can
throw.
you just play that for me?
He jumped.
Oh,
He jumped across
So-
the line first.
so teams are being coached now. Defensive teams are coaching to throw players across the line of touch. So it's a defensive ploy. They're throwing players
yeah.
across the line.
Oh, yeah, not bad.
Yeah, he went back, so. I think it might have been a touch call, but yeah.
And then the throwing them as well not only disrupts it but also disrupts them more. So if you
So if we just watch the lanky South African and we watch what the lifter does, so the eights sort of guided him across that line.
No attempt to look.
No attempt to lift, but he sort of guided him across. Sort of. So
I haven't seen much of it in Prem Rugby, have you two?
throw in?
What they do is they throw at the front, they'll throw the person up, it won't disrupt the line out, but it disrupts the maul. So they'll throw them, so then they're at the back of the maul, and then they'll go, oh, I'm stuck in the maul, because it
Caught up
can't
in
get
it.
landed.
Happened in the All Blacks, yeah. In the All Blacks, with Dalton Papali'i, he threw on and then Dalton came around and was literally on the side.
Yeah, so I was big in Mitre 10 last year, and then so some of the top teams that started to do it, so I thought so.
Cool. So we've all got some pretty clear pictures there, like regardless of where the game is and what we still want to identify at the line out. Pretty happy. Good discussions going on. What I want to do now is I want to give each group a scenario, and I want you guys just to discuss, read the scenario and then discuss amongst your group, like who's going to play the certain roles and stuff, and then you guys are going to go up, just going to present here, paint a picture for the other groups to see, and then what we'll do is we'll play it out. Then before the scenario comes, we'll discuss in the groups what it is that's been identified and what the issue is. Does that make sense? Cool.
Yeah. Back off the line. That's the scenario.
Oh, don't you actually have to be a reference? You're all so excited about me.
Yeah, I'm now referee. Cool. Alright, so basically what's happened is that the defenders here were already set up. They come in, they weren't happy with the gap, so they've gone and pushed someone away.
Yep. So situation is defenders are set up, attackers come in, they've gone, get off. What would we do in that scenario if we see that?
Do we say what we?
Yeah. What would you guys have?
Yeah, I think we had a discussion around if we did nothing, we would dig our own grave in this situation. Like, we're at least blowing the whistle, and we're at least saying something. We're like, look, if it's early in the game, you probably just want to set your standards. You're like, look, guys, you're having a chat to this guy about, look, leave him alone, let me sort it out. Because he's probably complaining about the gap anyway. And then you're saying to these guys, look, let's just make sure we hold our line, keep our gap, thanks, and get those standards reset. But then again, this whole situation could be different if it was the 72nd minute and you've already been having a chat to these guys with niggle off the ball, or for pushing and shoving or whatever it might be. So you might blow that penalty if it's already gone down that path and whatnot. But 9 times out of 10, you're probably just blowing the whistle, saying, guys, sort it out. You leave them alone. You keep the gap. Let's carry on.
Because do we all know what the law is in and around that about touching opposition player before the ball's in? Penalty.
It's the only penalisable offence, really.
Yeah.
Set up.
Second minute, will we blow it? Or will we opportunity?
What if the shoving was above the shoulder line?
In the face.
Yeah, in the face.
Probably go down that path, and so what we're seeing is how whether we really thought it meant did something else. But again, I suppose you feel the context of the game as well, like whether it's something that you want to address and set a standard straight away, or whether it's 30 minutes of the game you've already had something, or whether you want to set a standard and penalise this team. But I think where possible, you probably just want to assert your authority on both teams and say, you guys get a gap, you guys leave your hands off. If you do nothing, you're doing great.
And shoving back from the defending team, or the team that got pushed?
Yeah.
Well, that makes it easier because then you're not going to penalise anyone on that thing.
Well, we're all happy with that, so if we get that in second minute, we're all, guys, let me deal with it, you guys keep your gap. But 72nd minute, there's been a bit of niggle in the game. Happy to play penalty? All sort of agree?
Yeah.
Happy? Sweet, thanks team. Alright, we'll go Sam's team.
Team now known as Sam's team.
Yeah, that's it.
Not Rolly's team, I don't think you said it's not Rolly's team.
You guys
Rolly's team.
can be the referees.
That's mine.
Sorry, Rolly's team. We go Rolly's team then.
You guys are set, and it's our throwing.
Yeah.
We're over here just picking around. There's actually, we've got a straight line. We're over here. So stretch it and cover it. You ready? Preparing for line. Righto.
then he knocked it off. Are you on it? So basically there's less of them and they're coming in
Did you guess it?
and they go straight up and then they knock it on. And then this team's captain says, numbers.
Oh.
What do you rule there? Do you rule the knock on or the numbers?
Knock on.
Knock on.
They must perform.
So
The fingers were there.
the law ruling is, unless the throw is taken as soon as the lineout's formed, so here it was taken as soon as it's formed, the non-throwing team may not have more players. So if a lineout's taken as soon as the lineout's formed, you're allowed to have more players. So it means that there's no issue with this team having more players and you rule on the knock-on. And so the easy sell for that is that you need to give them an opportunity to match. You're probably not going to say, unless the line-out forms straight, you're not going to get into that, but that's what the law ruling is. Is it?
So a little bit of a trick one, because the first thing is that when an attacking team comes in their own line out, the first thing they'll always say is ref numbers. So if we had that situation, it's you've gone straight away. They didn't drop numbers, but you've still not gone.
I think it says in the law that they've got to be given time to conform.
Yes.
So they weren't given time to conform.
Yes. So key points there is not enough time. They've gone. Attacking teams walked in, delayed it, then gone straight up and knocked on. So therefore they don't get the numbers advantage. Cool.
Question, what's not enough time?
Well, they haven't, the line-out actually wasn't even formed by law until they arrived there, and once they arrived there, then they threw straight away. So there was no opportunity really to adjust.
Because they fuckled around and gone.
Stretched.
Yeah, stretched. and then just come in and gone straight up, but not gone. So therefore,
And Sam's line was just spot on. Like, it just used that simple language. Like, there was no opportunity to adjust. No chance of adjust.
but I suppose to avoid that as well, if we see that they're fluttering around, but if we count the numbers, what could we do just to assist the defence, but also not have that issue with the attacking team?
Cool, what the numbers are.
But would you do that? Because, I mean, the law ruling basically says you're allowed to have more numbers if they set up immediately. So aren't you then disadvantaging the defensive team? Because if they wanted, they could. They're more than welcome to leave all those numbers up if they know. So they're just playing the risk, really. If they know that the team's going to come in and go straight up, they're under law more than welcome to have more numbers than the other team. So basically you're disadvantaging them from a decision that they make. I mean, they're rolling the dice that if they set up, then they need to drop the players out and they've got people in the back line, but that's my only thought on that, because I used to do the same thing as well, and then a player actually said to me, like, no, we want to set up with more players, because if they go straight up, we're allowed these players here, and I was like, oh shit, you're actually right.
Yeah, so a really good point there, eh? But I guess it's as well, what I was referring to is that if say for example, they keep the attacking team keep going straight up, and then third or fourth line up they knock it on, and then they say you ref numbers, you got the backing to say, look, you don't have the advantage because you didn't give them enough time to drop. So we're still happy with that?
Yeah.
Still cool, makes sense? Cool. Ramstein?
Oh, it's not passing anymore. Alright.
Still standing there.
Let's see how this goes.
Yeah. I'll be at the front, you can go down the back.
On the opposition, opposition not turn around, half back on the side.
There'll be one line.
Right, right.
Yeah. So where's the line? Is it?
Down there.
So you're up.
One that's more of a shambles in the video.
Okay.
Are you in the line out or not?
No.
Right, back 10.
No.
That's too much. So, what's going on there?
Were they all in the same team?
Why are you really enough for 2 seconds? no man's land, so he wasn't in the line out or back 10.
Okay.
So yeah, just around that setup of the ref asking if they're in or out, and if they say we're in, bringing them up
To the 2 metre mark.
Because he
And
was
then they say
standing
no.
more than 2 metres back from the line.
then get back 10.
So you're sort of standing in a sort of like 5, 6, 7, 8 metre back, sort of
Yeah.
no man's land zone.
That's not the scenario, he just decided to ad-lib that.
Yeah, so quite happy that we want to set the standard of where the halfback stands, just so that, one, they're not caught in no man's land, but also so that we have a clear picture. All happy?
I think the sanction would be free kick.
Yep.
Because he wouldn't go,
I gave him Kevin.
he wouldn't go back 10 and he wouldn't come up 2.
But
Oh, I would penalise him for what he said, so.
Yeah, we're at the law 9.
Awesome. So obviously, hopefully, that guy gives you guys some clear pictures around what we might see on Saturday, but also just some trends that we've probably been noticing in club footy as well. So, one, it just gives us the outcome of it is just to give us that housekeeping, as we've talked about around communicating at the line out. You know, what our priorities are. So key things that we need to do, looking up, scanning, what are we looking for at the line out, making sure that everyone's in position where we want them to be. Do we ever transition in our position based on the time of the game, and also how lineouts are setting up. So short, full, 3-man, whatever. You know, are we transitioning